Welcome back. Today we're here to discuss the 2005 NHL playoffs. The matchups have been determined. One matchup, the 8th seed in the East, came down to the final day of the season where we had a really strange game between the teams who were meeting. The Islanders and the Flyers in the first round. I think that game ended, I believe it was 8-7 in a shootout. Eric Goddard scored for the Islanders in that one, and Philly ended up winning. It was a weird matchup. Atlanta won. Unfortunately, they did lose out, so yeah, I'm wearing Florida and Montreal because they are two teams that missed out on the playoffs, and I don't have any gear for any of the teams that are in the playoffs. So yeah, we're gonna this year's playoffs are a little bit predictable. There's some unpredictability to it. For example, the West especially has very unpredictable series. The East is a little bit easier to predict, so we're going to start. The Islanders and the Flyers, who again met in the final game of the year, final game of the regular season. The Islanders lost 8-7, like I said, in a shootout. But to be fair, they did not play everybody. They rested a couple guys. Eric Goddard again was in the lineup. Matt Molson got into the lineup. Trent Hunter. Sven Butenschan, for some reason, was on the forward, their forward depth for that game. But the Islanders and the Flyers, the one place I do think the Flyers might have the Islanders beat is the physicality and the veteran leadership. I think the Islanders have a great scoring core. They have a great scoring depth. The blue line, very solid. Phillies has been very up and down over this season. Even their scoring, they are the top line of Leclerc, Roenick, and Amante. It is that top line in Philadelphia doing the goal scoring. And in net, I trust Thomas Vokoun. I trust Thomas Vokoun more than Dominik Hasek right now. Despite the fact Dominik Hasek is up for the Vezina and Thomas Vokoun isn't, Dominik Hasek has the ability to steal games and steal series. He's done it before for these guys, the Buffalo Sabres. Many times he's done it for them. But I don't know if he has the team in front of him that can help him, you know? If I'm being honest, I feel like if you shut down the top line in Philadelphia, the Islanders might sweep. But regardless, I think however this series ends, it is the New York Islanders going on to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think the Islanders have everything that you need to get to at least the second round, if not farther. We'll get there when we get to the second round matchups. But the Islanders, I think, are taking out Philly. I think it's 5. I think the Flyers maybe win a game if they're lucky. I think Hasek is able to backstop them to that. But aside from that, I think the Islanders win. Carolina-Washington is another interesting one because Carolina has a lot of depth. They have really good depth. Zygmunt Palffy, Richard Zednik had a breakout year this year. They still have veteran leadership in Rod Brind'Amour. Very solid blue line. Good goaltending. Kevin Weekes, Jose Theodore. And Archer Zerbe all in net for them, so they have 3 solid goaltenders that can probably go in the playoffs. Archer Zerbe, very underrated in the playoffs as well. It would not baffle me in the slightest if Carolina plays Archer Zerbe. And I'm actually gonna write. I'm gonna write the. It's probably getting a little messy, but I'm gonna write who I think the wins here and then the series score. But Carolina-Washington again. Washington has great forwards. Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, Peter Bondra on the top line. Brett Hull, who scored 50 goals this year, is on their second line. The issue with Washington is their lack of depth. As an example, Tony Dahlman played all 82 games this year, 0 points. Dahlman was vastly overperformed by Danny Fritz over in Pittsburgh, who was seen as not being NHL ready for another 4 seasons. Danny Fritz had something like 63 points this year, and Tony Dahlman in Washington had 0. Washington does not have the depth that Carolina has. They got here on the back of that top 4 forward core. The defense, I would argue, goes to Washington just because they have Sergei Gonchar. Carolina has a couple decent guys, but I think Washington is good there. Carolina, again, with good goaltending. Washington does have Olaf Kozlik, who they got in an offseason trade for Roman Turek. Sorry, they have Roman Turek, who they got in exchange for Olaf Kozlik, sending him to Calgary. yeah, if I'm being honest, I feel like this series could go either way if that top four really really performs up to the level that they should be. Of course, Washington as well, Stanley Cup champion last year, does not look anywhere near the type of level of that team that won the cup last year. Carolina does look really good right now. But you know what? I am going to say, I think it's a massive upset. Washington gets the win. I think Washington is actually going to win this series. I think Washington manages to upset the Carolina Hurricanes. And you know what? They're going to give them a run for their money, too. It is going to be in 7. Washington, technically I should go in 7, but whatever. I think Washington wins it in 7. I think this series is going 7. I think Washington has what it takes to pull off the upset. Of course, I could be completely wrong. Carolina sweeps them. And, we forget that Washington was even a Stanley Cup champion in 3 years from now. But I think Washington does have what it takes to get that upset. Despite Carolina having great leadership, great players on their team, I think Washington avenges some regular season embarrassments that they had this year. And I think they're going to at least the second round take on the New York Islanders. We'll get to that series in a little bit. Buffalo Sabres, who are the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, taking on the 6th seed Ottawa Senators. Ottawa bought at the deadline Alexei Kovalev and Chris Chelios. Great additions. Love Alexei Yashin. Great forward. Formerly played for the New York Rangers, of course. I believe he was also with the Red Wings for a brief period of time. And Chris Chelios, also former Red Wing, former Blackhawk, former Montreal Canadian. Former Blackhawk, I say that because I have the hat right here. I have the Blackhawks hat. But 2 really solid forward, 2 solid players added to this team. Marian Hossa, Marty Havlad. They have really solid players. Patrick Lalime in net scares me a bit as well. Patrick Lalime has had great playoff success up to this point in his career. He's had great playoff success. Buffalo started the year 10-0-0. They were no doubt supposed to be the 1st seed, and they fell to 3rd. They fell to 3rd, more so just because of a lack of finish in the second half. With that being said, though, they have a very solid team. Andy Hilbert still on that blue line with a Norris Trophy nomination this year. They have great forwards. Alexei Zhinikov's on that blue line. This could be a very good defensive series. This could be the makings of a really, really boring series or a really thrilling, very tightly close series. And while Patrick Lalime is good, over in Buffalo, I fail to think how Buffalo doesn't get out of the first round. I fail to see how they don't get out of the first round. And you know what? I do think Buffalo gets there in 6 games. I think Buffalo takes out Ottawa in 6 games. Ottawa, who has not had great playoff success in recent years. Of course, they kept getting eliminated by the Maple Leafs. They missed last year. They're back in the playoffs again this year. I fail to see again how Buffalo doesn't make it out of the first round this year. I think they are a very, very solid team. And yeah, I think they get out. Tampa Bay and Boston. Now, this is an interesting series here because these 2 teams faced last year. Tampa Bay won in 7 games. Boston looked like they could have choked the life out of Tampa Bay. And they very well could have. It was just that Game 7, it just kind of fell apart for Boston. They arguably got better this year. They did lose Pavel Bure. David Legwand made up for that. David Legwand had an incredible season. Glenn Murray continued to play great like he usually does. On the blue line, Brian Leetch, who got himself a Norris nomination again, as well this year at 45,000 years old, it feels like. Dude is continuing to play incredibly. Boston, the one issue that scares me is Andrew Raycroft in net. That is the one thing that I don't know if Andrew Raycroft can carry the Boston Bruins all the way to a... I don't know if he can carry them past the Tampa Bay Lightning, who, in their own right, have had some misfortune along the way. They traded Nikolai Habibulin in the offseason. Brent Johnson has not necessarily lived up to what they wanted as a starting goaltender. Their defense is one of the best in the National Hockey League. Their forward core is very solid. Really good additions of Jan Hrdina and Alexander Daigle, both from Phoenix. Can they get out of the first round this year? As much as I like Boston, and as much as I think that they do have the talent and the ability to get out of the first round, I think last year's result is repeated. I think Tampa Bay is going to take the series in 7. I think Boston fights. Boston fights as much as they can and as hard as they can, but Tampa Bay, I think, does take the series. I think Tampa Bay actually absolutely has what it takes. Sorry. I believe they do have what it takes to make it out of the first round again, and we'll see if they can beat Buffalo when we get back to the East. Over to the West. The first seed, Vancouver Canucks against the 8th seed, St. Louis. Vancouver was a very surprising first seed, if you ask me. Vancouver is not a team that I would think of as, oh yeah, they can clinch first seed. The 8th seed, 7th seed, somewhere around there, yeah, definitely. But not an 8th seed. I would not have expected Vancouver to make the 8th seed. St. Louis, though, of course, they're contracting after the season. They want to go on a run. They want to try and bring something back for the fans of St. Louis before they contract from the league and Saskatoon comes back in. Vancouver has good players. Marcus Naslund, Todd Bertuzzi, the Sedin twins. Daniel Sedin had a great season this year. Henrik is still struggling a little bit. Their defense, Matthias Oland, Brent Sopel had a great year this year. I'm very surprised he was not up for the Norse this year. And in goaltending, Dan Cloutier is very solid. St. Louis has great forwards on their own right. Alexei Morozov, Richard Park, as I mentioned in yesterday's video. Great forwards. Great forwards. Their defense, very good. Bryce Salvadoran and Alexander Kavanaugh. Their goaltending is the only thing that I'm a bit iffy on. Byron Dafoe, who I mentioned was traded for a 2003 first. I don't know if he has what it takes to be a starter in the National Hockey League at this stage, and I don't know if he can backstop St. Louis. But at the same time, Vancouver does not have that much depth. They're a gritty core of players. They're very gritty. But if we're getting down to it, Vancouver being the first seed usually does not fare well for them, and it's not this time. St. Louis is going to take the series. I think St. Louis actually does pull off the upset, and this might be a bit blasphemous for those of you who are Vancouver fans. They're doing it in 5 games. St. Louis is going to get a stranglehold on Vancouver. Vancouver might take a game 3, maybe 4, but St. Louis is going to choke the life out of them very early on. And I think we're going to see a bit of a run for St. Louis. I genuinely do think we might see that run for St. Louis this year. 2nd seed Detroit, 7th seed Dallas. This is a very fascinating matchup to me. Firstly, the battle of the Ds, the battle of the D teams in the NHL. The Red Wings, Pavel Datsyuk on an incredible extension for the next 8 years, $1.5 million. He just signed that. Clearly wants to stay in Detroit. He had an amazing season. Nick Lidstrom played great. The issue is he's their only blue liner. Yuri Fisher, Brent Seabrook. These players are good, but they're still young. Lidstrom helps them out big time. They have veterans on the team. Detroit has really solid forwards, and they have that veteran leadership that I don't know if they're absolutely an out in the first round. Dallas can definitely be an out in the first round. They have, I would argue, better forward depth overall than Dallas, getting Mark Messier, Paul Kariya, Frederick Modine, all from free agency during the season, bringing them in and doing paper transactions to keep them near the bottom of the salary cap. Dallas, I like their blue line. Their goaltending is I will argue better than Detroit's. Yuri Hummel played the first 10 games of the year, and he's been confirmed as their starter for game 1. And I don't get why. Jean-Sebastien Giguère had the reins for most of the season, and they're putting Yuri Hummel in net. That might be the downfall of the Red Wings. Dallas, I like Marty Turco. Marty Turco is a great goaltender. Is he better than Yuri Hummel? Absolutely. Yuri Hummel had a great year last year as Florida's backup. I don't get why he wasn't given more starts this year. I understand Jean-Sebastien Giguère, you pay him originally $13 million, $10 million as Detroit, and you're lucky that you had to get under the salary cap and had to restructure that contract because that looks like a terrible contract right now. Dallas, I'll be honest, as much as I think starting Yuri Hummel is going to be a mistake, it's not going to cost Detroit. They are going to find a way to win this series. And if I'm being honest, I don't see it going anything less than 5 games, but I think it ends in 6. I can't see the series ending in a sweep. I can't see it ending in 5 in such a gentleman's sweep-esque fashion. I think it goes at the very least 6. Wouldn't surprise me if it goes 7, though. These two teams are going to fight. They're going to battle really hard against each other. Dallas is going to give it its all, but I think Detroit ends the series. I don't think there's going to be a single blowout in this series either. I think they're all going to be 1-2 goal games. Going to be very entertaining. If you're a Dallas or Detroit fan, you're going to love this series. Maybe not Dallas in the end if you're getting eliminated by Detroit, but it's going to be a very entertaining and fun matchup. San Jose is the 3rd seed, the winner of their division, against the Minnesota Wild, who come in as the 6th seed. I like both teams. I like what both teams had here. San Jose, of course, off extending Patrick Marleau, Olli Jokinen, Valerie Bure's on their team as well. They have very solid forward depth. Really like the forwards that they have. Don't have too much veteran leadership. They brought some in with Brendan Shanahan at the deadline, and I like that move for him. Brendan Shanahan played well until he got suspended. Minnesota, though. I like Minnesota. Marian Gaborik, Joe Sakic, and Peter Forsberg on your top line is great. The issue is the little bit of a lack of depth. Pierre-Marc Bouchard had a really good season on your 4th line. The issue is he's not panning out to the level that you want out of Pierre-Marc Bouchard at this stage when he's 21 or 22. That's not what you want out of Pierre-Marc Bouchard. You want him to be evolving into that 3rd, second line center that you'd want out of him. San Jose's defense has been incredible. Mark Mathod has shown that he can be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. Kyle McLaren played great. Vladimir Malakhov, at 35 years old, he's starting to mature, and he's looking like he could genuinely be captain material on San Jose. He's looking like he'd be captain material, and that's a shocker for me, who 4 years ago was watching and thinking, this guy's out of the league in 2 years. And he's looking like he's having a career resurgence in San Jose, so props to San Jose for revitalizing his career. Brad Stewart, without lack of mentioning him, he's playing great. Brad Stewart's having a wonderful, wonderful season. And goaltending-wise, if we're talking goaltending, I would have to go with Evgeny Nabokov over Manny Fernandez. I like Fernandez, good starter, going to be good for years to come. But as much as I like Minnesota, and I want to see them going around like they did 2 years ago, if you're asking me, it's San Jose in 5. I think San Jose absolutely suffocates the life out of Minnesota. They take him out in 5, but that's not for lack of trying. Minnesota has a very defensive system. They started under Jacques Lemaire, who came in to be their first head coach, and I think they're continuing it. And it wouldn't surprise me if these games are all ending 1-0, 2-1 in overtime. It wouldn't surprise me if both these teams have great save percentages coming out of these series. It's gonna be hard to follow. Minnesota will push San Jose, even if they end up losing in 5 or even 4 games. It's gonna be a tough battle for San Jose, but I do think they get out of it. Maybe the weirdest matchup to look at, and probably the most underdog 4 seed I've seen. 4th seed Columbus against the 5th seed LA. Speaking of, actually, real quick, the Islanders did take the poll that I put up on my MySpace page. I did put that up. The Islanders did take that poll. The Carolina Hurricanes actually did take it. I believe this one was a little bit closer. I apologize for the little smudging on Ottawa here. Tampa Bay did take this one. These two were very close, Buffalo and Ottawa. Vancouver easily took this matchup with St. Louis. Detroit easily took the matchup. San Jose easily took the matchup. And Columbus easily takes the matchup. 1 second, sorry. Alright, sorry. Columbus easily took the matchup, but I don't think they will. Columbus really rode off the backs of Jeff Sanderson, Tyler Wright, Rick Nash. Those are their 3 big players. Pascal Leclerc had a fairly okay season in net. LA rode off the backs of Jason Allison, Mike Camilleri, Alexander Frolov, and absolutely Cristobal Huet. If you ask me, Cristobal Huet is no doubt about it the winner of the Vezina Trophy this year. Cristobal Huet had one of the most outstanding seasons I think I've seen for a goaltender, despite the stats not being great. The shots were low in the NHL this year, and he carried the Kings to that 5th seed. I think Cristobal Huet is too good to not get out of the first round this year, and I do see an upset happening here, and I think that the LA Kings are going to take this series. I think they're taking it in 4. I think the East has the more competitive series. I think the West is more dominant. Weirdly enough, despite the Islanders, Carolina, Buffalo, and Tampa being the far more competitive teams this year, being the much more dominant throughout the entire season, I do think that the East is more of a battle, and again, the West is more of a dominating performance, which might be something that you do expect out of, pretty much all 8 teams being battling here, and some of these teams not really caring. But I think LA takes it in 4. Columbus is in their first ever playoff series, I believe. I don't believe they made them last year. I don't think they're winning a game. I like Columbus, and I want to see them do good, but this is not their year. This is not their year to get into the second round. Speaking of, let's go back to the East. The Islanders taking on the Washington Capitals. Of course, this was the Eastern Conference Finals last year. The Capitals, I believe they swept the New York Islanders after the Lightning. After the Islanders swept the Lightning, they were then swept by the Capitals. This series is not ending in a sweep this year. It is not at all ending in a sweep. Again, the Capitals have a great core. They have a great core of players. They have, again, Lemieux, Yager, Bondra, Gonchar, Hall is a great veteran guy, and they have Roman Turek in net. The Islanders have the depth. The Islanders have that depth where, again, if you can shut down those top 4 forwards, Sergei Gonchar can't carry that team alone on the blue line. The Islanders can smother you. They can take control of the game whenever they want. And if I'm being honest, I don't think the series is going to be all that close. I think this is another Islanders win in 5. The New York Islanders are going to the Eastern Conference Finals for the 2nd straight year, and they are going to avenge their demons from last year, taking out the Washington Capitals. The Islanders have what it takes, and I think that they are going to get there. Sorry, I'm just going to remove a little bit of a line from the eye, just because I think that looks a little bit, okay, not exactly a little bit better, but there we go, a little bit. Buffalo and Tampa. This is going to be a tough series. Tampa went out in the second round last year. Buffalo was barely even in the playoffs last year. It's tough to say. I like both these teams. They're both really great teams that deserve to make the Eastern Conference Finals, and it sucks that they have to face each other. It genuinely sucks that they have to face each other. I'm going to put right away, I think no matter who wins this series, it's going to 7. Tampa Bay, if they get there, they're going to have to battle through hell. Buffalo's going to have to go through hell against Ottawa. The Islanders might have a very easy series coming up, but we'll obviously get to that after we get to the East. But Buffalo and Tampa Bay, Tampa's got great forward depth. Buffalo's got great forward depth. Tampa has great defense. Buffalo's great defense. Buffalo might beat them in the goaltending category. Tampa does have Ryan Miller, though. Ryan Miller might end up being needed in this series. And Ryan Miller against his former team, don't be surprised if Tampa Bay ends up taking this series in 7. Having to go through 2 7-game series to get to the Islanders again, like they did last year, it's building up. you can tell this is all but what we're almost needing in this conference finals. It wouldn't be surprised if it's Buffalo. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Buffalo. Out of these 2 teams, you can pick either of them, but I do think Tampa gets to the conference finals. Going to the West, St. Louis and Detroit. I feel like it's a no-brainer. I don't have to discuss too much here. Red Wings in 5. Red Wings have better forwards. Detroit, despite the fact that St. Louis has really solid top 4 defensemen, Detroit has Nicholas Lidstrom. And in net again, St. Louis has Byron Dafoe. Detroit has Yuri Hummel and J.S. Giguere. Now, Yuri Hummel, again, can completely prove me wrong, and he might turn out to be a great starting goaltender for the Red Wings in the playoffs. Maybe Giguere has to come in, and he ends up taking the series for Detroit. Who knows? But I think Detroit, no matter who they're playing, Hummel or Giguere, it's better than Byron Dafoe. And I think Detroit ends up taking the series in 5. Like I said, I think Detroit absolutely takes this one. San Jose and LA. This is a rivalry series. Actually, both these second round matchups are a rivalry series. San Jose, should win this series handedly. Cristobal Huet might take this series farther than it needs to. San Jose, again, has great forwards. LA has a lack of scoring depth. San Jose has great defense. LA not so much. They're still playing Brian Mayer and Maxim Kuznetsov. Yeah, if you ask me, as much as I'd love to see Cristobal Huet get on a run, San Jose wins in 4. San Jose is going to take out the Kings in 4. This might end up being another close series. This might be another one of those series where, the Kings defeat the Blue Jackets in 4. They might be able to ride that momentum to a victory against San Jose. I think San Jose knows what they have to do, and they end up dominating the LA Kings, unfortunately. It might hurt Cristobal Huet's stats in the end, but it's going to be a really fun series. All right, so our conference finals are now the Islanders and the Lightning, the Red Wings, and the Sharks. Who do I see taking the East? It's a lot easier to say the Islanders because the Islanders did sweep Tampa last year. It's a lot easier to say that. But at the same time, Tampa got better. The Islanders stayed the same. Tampa might have adapted to the Islanders game by now. But in a goaltending battle between Brent Johnson and Thomas Vokoun, I'm going Thomas Vokoun. In a defensive battle, it's Adrian Aucoin and Roman Hamrlik against Al MacInnis and Chris Pronger. It's two of the greatest defensemen of the last decade against two of the most underappreciated defensemen of the last couple of years. Forward core, it's Vincent Lecavalier and Marty St. Louis against Alexei Yashin and Pavel Bure, though. As good as Lecavalier has been this year, Marty St. Louis has been a little bit underwhelming for what you want out of Marty St. Louis. And the season that he had 2 years ago, he had a really solid 03-04. 02-03. The Islanders have gotten better. Again, first seed in the Eastern Conference. They are the President's Trophy winners. The Islanders, again, if we're going off the forward core, I might be inclined to give it to the Islanders, despite the Tampa Bay Lightning's really solid depth. Defensively, I might give that to Tampa. I like Hamrlik and Aucoin. But when you have a team of Chris Pronger, Al MacInnis, Sheldon Surrey, Yaroslav Spacek, Yaroslav Modry, you're very solid. You're solid at defense. Goaltending, I'd give to the Islanders. Islanders are making the finals, and it's in 7. The 7-game series is finally going to bite Tampa Bay. The New York Islanders, I think Tampa's going to fight as hard as they ever have. They're going to play great, and I think the Islanders end up winning it in 7. The New York Islanders have what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. They were the President's Trophy winner for a reason. They dominate the East. 5 games, 7 games. And they're going to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1984, I believe it was, when they faced the Islanders. They faced themselves. They faced the Oilers. Out west, it is not the Oilers that have a chance of making the 84 finals happen again 21 years later. It's the Red Wings and the Sharks. Who takes the series? Detroit or San Jose? These two teams have history with each other. It was 11 years ago. 11 years ago, 1994, I believe it was. San Jose upsets the hell out of the Detroit Red Wings. They absolutely upset the Detroit Red Wings. They took them out kind of handedly. San Jose is a much better team than it was back then, obviously. But you could argue so is Detroit. Cups in 97, 98, 2002. You can never underestimate the Detroit Red Wings. While they're not as stacked as they might have been back in 2002, they're still great. Again, Pavel Datsyuk, Henrik Zetterberg had a great season. Joe Thornton, as their first line center, who might look like their second line center because Pavel Datsyuk just had an amazing season. I don't know. San Jose, again, they have Olyokin. They have Patrice Bergeron. He's in St. Louis. They have Patrick Marleau. They have a really good defense. The defensive game in San Jose is admittedly better than the Detroit Red Wings. Do the Red Wings have what it takes to take out the San Jose Sharks with Yuri Hamel in net against Evgeny Nabokov? The forwards I would give to Detroit, but defense and goaltending I think goes to San Jose. And if I'm being 100% honest, San Jose is going to the Stanley Cup Final this year. Now I know a lot of people projected San Jose out probably in the second round to Columbus. Some people probably predict that. I think the Islanders and the Sharks are your Stanley Cup champions. I think the Islanders and the Sharks are your Stanley Cup finalists, I should say. One of these teams will be your Stanley Cup final, will be your Stanley Cup winner. The Islanders and the Sharks is a great matchup, and I think a lot of people would be happy to see that. I think a lot of people would be happy. I know a lot of people would probably be happy to see, say, Buffalo going in against, say, a Minnesota. Maybe not for the games that there would be played, but just a team wins their first Stanley Cup guaranteed instead of maybe a team wins their Stanley Cup and maybe a team wins their fifth and their first since the dynasty. The Islanders, again, great forward core. Pavel Datsyuk. Pavel Bure, not Pavel Datsyuk. Pavel Bure. Alexei Yashin. They have really solid depth as well. They have great depth. San Jose, Oliokin and Patrick Marleau. If we're comparing the top two forwards, I'm giving that to the Islanders. If we're comparing depth, as Brendan Shanahan's a great forward presence, a great veteran presence, but I think I'd still give the depth. I'd give the depth to San Jose. Defense, Roman Hamrlik, Adrian Aucoin, Brad Stewart, and Vladimir Malikov. I will argue that's even. Goaltending, Thomas Vokoun, Evgeny Nabokov. I like Nabokov a lot. I like Thomas Vokoun. But if I'm being 100% honest, as good as the Islanders team is, and as much as they're destined to win a Stanley Cup this year, they're lacking. I can't even say if they're lacking anything. But I just think that the New York Islanders get outplayed, and the San Jose Sharks are your Stanley Cup champions, and they are going to win it in 5 games. The San Jose Sharks, I think, are your 2005 Stanley Cup champion. Yeah, it'd be great to see a franchise win their first Stanley Cup in history. Carolina can do that. This year, Carolina. Washington still has that chance to repeat. Philly has a chance to win their first Stanley Cup since I believe it was 1974. Islanders since 1980, I believe it was 1982 was the last time they won the Cup. They have a chance. Buffalo wins their first Cup ever. Ottawa can win their first Cup ever. Tampa Bay first Cup ever. Boston first Cup since, 1970 something? 1970 with Bobby Orr. Vancouver first Cup ever. St. Louis first Cup ever. Detroit first Cup since in 3 years. Dallas first Cup since 99. San Jose first Cup ever. Minnesota first Cup ever. Columbus first Cup ever. LA first Cup ever, I believe. A majority of these teams can win their first Cup ever, and it's going to be exciting. If we get, say, a Buffalo and LA Kings matchup, well, that probably is a big victory for Buffalo, and they probably destroy LA. It'll be exciting to see a team win their first Cup ever, but San Jose, I think, is going to take it. I think San Jose has a big chance, a big, big opportunity here to prove everybody wrong that San Jose is a Cup contender, and I think they end up taking the Stanley Cup. The Islanders in the next 3 years should, though. The Islanders in the next 3 years should absolutely win a Stanley Cup. They have what it takes. I think even if they get to at least the conference finals, that proves to them they have what it takes to win a Cup. If they get to the finals, especially, and obviously if they win it, that definitely proves it because they won the Cup. So yeah, best you can do for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're just passing your way through, hit that like, subscribe button. Maybe that notification button. Get all the subscriptions for the videos that I produce and I make. I do live streams occasionally. I stream for the Montreal Canadiens games. And yeah, that is going to do it. Again, let me know what you guys think on the predictions. Much appreciated. Thank you guys again so much for watching. My name is Rice again, and I'm out. Love you guys. Bye, guys. Link subscription. Bye.